Ladies and gentlemen, grab your pen and paper and write down 3 things you're grateful for. This is OD on Life. Come get high with us.
Hey everybody, and welcome to OD on Life. Today I have a special episode for you, somebody that I actually haven't talked to in quite a while. It is ex-U.S. Army Ranger, writer, filmmaker, adventurer, and founder of Club Fearless, Scott Goodknight, and a longtime friend of mine. So Scott, thank you for coming on today.
Oh, great to be here, Dan. Thank you.
We talked briefly last week, but before that it had been quite a spell since we had talked, so I know we have a lot to talk about today. You've been up to a lot of interesting things, so I look forward to catching up and letting these people out there know what you're all about and what you're up to.
All right, let's do it.
So I've got a whole list of things that I'd like to cover with you, but I want to give people maybe a little bit of a kind of a fast forward of your background. Like I mentioned, you're an ex-U.S. Army Ranger. You at one point published an atlas called the Biker's Atlas, which was a guide to bikers on the different places where there would be rallies and where to eat, where to go, what was happening there, which is a really cool project, I think, that filled a very specific niche. And these days, this is a very brief background of Scott, obviously. These days, Scott is running Club Fearless and is working on a film, which is the Fearless documentary. So Scott has a lot of experience dealing with fear in several different ways and has been rubbing shoulders with some of the most, I don't know if you could call them fearless, but I'm sure they feel some fear. They've just learned how to master that and how to deal with it. So I think it'll be really interesting to hear about these people you've been around lately, Scott. So if you could maybe give us a little, brief history of your last few months on this filming project. What's going on with you?
Well, thank you, Dan. Fear definitely has been my obsession for probably the past 25 years. Growing up, I had a lot of fears, like we all do, but I was a complete mirror opposite of the person I am today. I was very much an introvert, not social at all. I actually ate my lunch in the library in high school. There's actually a picture of me in the high school annual reading a book, eating a sandwich, and the caption says something like, "Hey, Scott, we caught you again." So I was really kind of almost like a nerd, like a recluse. But in reading those books and becoming just obsessed with the stories of heroes and whatnot, I started seeing this pattern, and you can see it in any Hollywood movie, any good book is going to follow a formula where this average everyday Joe that nobody expects to really do anything is thrust into this position where they have to confront their fears. They have to go on a journey. They have to do something to save their village or save the world. And so there's a mentor that comes into the picture. They meet all these unlikely friends, and they all have different skills, and together they form a team. And they go off and they confront the enemy, whatever it is, if it's a person or a dragon or a system or a disease, a biological disease or zombies or whatever. There's this common enemy, and they go through this process, and through the process they discover that they had the real journey was within. They discovered they could do more than they thought they could, and there's lifelong bonds that are formed, and people die along the way. Terrible things happen. There's always somebody that's lost. And so I think in reading those books, I realized I've got to do something to change my life, or I'm going to be stuck in this little small town of literally 6,000 people I was raised in, with a lot of horrible money beliefs and some really outdated spiritual beliefs and just beliefs about what we were capable of and what we were supposed to do. A lot of good values, hard work, honesty, loyalty, those type of things, which of course we all want, but just some very limiting beliefs. So through this journey, as you mentioned, I dropped out of college, went into the U.S. Army, and was immediately confronting my greatest fears: heights, the dark, being out in swamps or unknown areas in total blackness, trying to operate in swamps where there were alligators and venomous snakes, and dealing with bullets and machine guns and bombs and explosions and everything you can imagine. Jumping out of planes, of course, the danger there. Being in water, people have died of hypothermia, all types of situations. While I was I knew people that were killed in training. It's that dangerous. So I learned something, or maybe I kind of stumbled onto it. I got lucky, and I realized that if I didn't hesitate, and maybe in the beginning it was a little bit of a reckless attitude, but if I didn't hesitate, I would tend to get the promotions faster, which meant more money. And it wasn't a lot of money back then, but the prestige that you could get by earning different, going through different schools that other people just hesitated on because it was going to be difficult. And there's always a chance you could fail and look stupid. And nobody wants to fail in airborne school or ranger school. Nobody wants to come back without the tab or the wing.
Yeah.
So you have to confront those fears, even to make the decision to take the first step. So that became a pattern I became obsessed with. And that's why whenever I got out, I worked a job for a couple of years, but I confronted my fears of financial insecurity and failure and looking stupid and all that, and started a business making maps for motorcyclists. And that went on for almost 10 years. I mean,
Hey, Scott, can I ask you a question real quick? So you said you didn't hesitate, and you jumped in and you took risks and you tried things. Did you have some failures along the way when you were in the Army? Did you try to get some tabs and not get them, or how did that go?
Oh, absolutely. I'll be totally transparent. Some things didn't work out. I went to the SFAS, Special Forces Assessment and Selection course, got about a week into that. That's after I went through Ranger School, so it should have been a breeze. And it was tough, and sleep deprivation and all that. And I just said, you know what? I just don't want to do this for the rest of my life. This just sucks and is miserable, and I don't care to do this. So I dropped out. I did a voluntary withdrawal. VW is what they call it.
Right.
I come back. They send me on a attachment to go down to Panama with the 1st Ranger Battalion, and I actually was in a situation where we had a training accident, and this guy's face was blown off with explosives, and we're in the middle of the jungle, and we could not get radio communication back to our base. The jungle was just too thick. We were too far out. So I had no choice but to run through the jungle, just like the song, and navigate using only a map. Only problem is, about a mile into my navigation, I realized I forgot the map. But somehow I found the aid station. We saved the guy's life. I got a little award for that. But then I also got an opportunity to be on the best Ranger team. And that was a huge honor. And I went and trained with some of the most amazing guys who are still my lifelong friends to this day. And me and my team, we finished 5th. They sent me to Korea the next year to run a long-range surveillance team. And the partner that I had before, they went back next year and won it. So I feel connected to them. And yeah, every opportunity or every adversity, every failure, there's also one door closes, another door opens.
Right.
There was a lot of situations.
Oh, sorry to interrupt, but I was just going to say, when I screw up and something goes, the wrong way, I keep thinking the game's not over. Like I think of things like football or baseball. I got scored on, but that's okay because you get the ball, you get another chance, you just keep going. And for people that don't know, can you tell us what the Best Ranger competition is, Scott?
It's where they take a 2-man team from every battalion in the Army, every infantry battalion. I think they've expanded it a little bit more now and to become a little bit more diversified. It used to only be Ranger battalions in the Ranger department, but they take 50 2-man teams and put you through the most grueling competition on the planet. And I'll go up against anybody and compare this to an Ironman or whatever. Nothing compares to this. It's 3 days with no sleep. It's back-to-back events for 3 days. And we're talking, of course, obstacle courses, the toughest obstacle courses in the world, a couple miles long, canoe races, a 10-mile canoe race. You're spot jumping with parachutes. You're shooting for accuracy with machine guns and rifles and pistols, hand-to-hand combat, rappelling, climbing walls, all sorts of ranger skills. But you also have to move almost 20 miles on the first night. And I think sometimes it's over, sometimes it's a little bit less than that, carrying almost 80 pounds of gear. And you have to maintain about a 15-minute per mile pace on a road march the first night. So your feet are literally just hamburger meat after the first night. The second night, after a full day of doing all these other races and activities, the second night you basically do the same thing, except now you're navigating through the woods, not on a clear-cut road. You actually have to navigate and pick your points in total darkness. So if they take the second one, which is harder, and throw it on the second night, it's brutal. So out of the 52-man teams, on average, only about 17 to 20 teams finish. And these are Delta Force, Special Forces, the best, recon and hardcore dudes out of Ranger battalions. So just to finish the thing was an honor. But using a lot of the techniques that we'll talk about today, and just stuff that probably people have heard about, but just really implementing the visualization and learning how to block off pain and block out your fear, we were able to come in 5th place. It was a real highlight of my life. It's something that I'll always be proud of. And I won't hesitate to say also there was a good degree of luck involved. I got lucky. I was lucky to be around the right people. I was lucky to have the right mentors. And I was lucky that I didn't realize what I was going to get into, because it was the most miserable thing. And after the first day, all I wanted to do was quit, but I couldn't,
Right.
I made a decision. So it's kind of like that. It was the most terrible and wonderful thing I ever participated in.
Wow. And I'm curious, too, some of these books that got you into this life, what were some of your favorite books when you were in that library back in high school?
Some of the ones that really stand out in my mind that I started out with, there was a book by Thor Heyerdahl called Voyage of the Kontiki. And they recently made a movie out of it, but I highly encourage anyone to just pick up the book. It's an easy read, and it's about these guys who built a balsa wood raft and sailed it from the west coast of South America all the way over to these islands in the South Pacific that were thousands and thousands, maybe 10,000 miles away. It was a long way to prove a point. That's how they say the islands got colonized, and they said it was impossible and nobody can do it. But they did it, and they faced all these adversities, storms and sharks and you name it. And that really kind of instilled the adventure in my mind. And I think I read a book about Edmund Hillary climbing Mount Everest. I read a book about there was a famous runner from New Zealand, an 800-meter and 1-mile runner named Peter Snell, and there was a fictional book written based on the true story of how Arthur Lydiard, I think that was his trainer. I mean, it's been a long time, but just the brutal training methods that they used. And then I started reading books about soldiers in Vietnam, special forces and rangers, and actually got to meet some of the real life guys that wrote these books later on in my life that inspired me to make a decision to go on an adventure and do something that everybody said was crazy. They said, "You're crazy. You're going to get killed." And I was just like, I'd rather get killed doing something amazing than to live this boring existence of safety and security. Then, of course, I picked up some books like Psycho-Cybernetics by Maxwell Maltz, Power of Positive Thinking by Norman Vincent Peale. What are some of the others? Some of the early on books. those are some that really stand out. Think and Grow Rich.
Yep.
All of it's the same stuff. I mean, I don't care what book you read. If it's about success and it's about somebody doing something amazing, the same principles are there. They're just going to be talked about from a little bit different angle, different point of view, in my opinion.
I feel kind of like a broken record because I bring this up on every episode, but those stories like you're talking about and biographies, I really love biographies. And, you know, the Voyage of the Kontiki is, you know, a biography of part of a person's life in a way. You know, it's a true life story. And one that I really love that you reminded me of is, I think it was just called The Endurance. It's about Ernest Shackleton and his crew. They got stuck in the ice. Oh my goodness. Talk about miserable.
That was there's a documentary on that also. And there's some guys that recently replicated that journey. And I watched it. That had to be one of the most miserable things. You're out in the open ocean, which, first of all, I don't know about you, but man, seasickness is like, that's why I didn't go into the Navy SEALs. I can swim like a fish, but the motion of the ocean, it really gets me. So these guys are out there on 15-foot swells and in the middle of the winter, just freezing and starving to death. And,
you know, I went
if
down.
If they didn't make it, they would have died, you know, if they didn't make it. Everybody. I
went down to Antarctica on a ship that in our time is considered a small ship. It's actually at the bottom of the ocean now, but it was called, what was it called? The Explorer. It was this red and white ship that was, I can't remember how long it was, but it was much smaller than most of the cruise ships that go there now. But it was still huge compared to what these guys were in, like you're saying. And I remember looking out from my bunk, looking out the window, and I would see these giant swells coming, and then, you know, my window would go underwater. I'm probably driving sailors nuts. What is it called? A portal or porthole, whatever my window is. But it would go,
that's what they call it,
way underwater, and then it would come back up and go way, like, you know, 20 or 30 feet up out of the water. And I'm thinking to myself, oh my God, these guys did this on wood ships that were 100 feet long, maybe, or something like that. I couldn't believe it. You know, our ship was probably 250 or something in feet, roughly.
Yeah, but they took life rafts, you know, the little wooden life raft boats, and built a structure over the top of it to, you know, shelter themselves, and that's what they were in. It was horrible.
Because their big, quote, air quote, big ship had been crushed. Oh my goodness. Yeah.
Right.
If somebody's listening.
So let's get in the little one. That'll make sense.
Yeah. If you like adventure stories and you're not familiar with that one, check it out. And the Kontiki, what was the title of that one again?
Voyage of the Kontiki.
Yeah, and I saw that movie you're talking about also, which was, I mean, it depends on what you're into. They were both good. Yeah, I love adventure stories. So anyway, sorry, I totally sidetracked you there. But you were getting into, you know, basically telling us about your experience with dealing with fear. And let's see, where were you when I totally hijacked you?
Well, I think, you know, so having the courage to start my own business, I know that's what everybody's interested in. How can I make money? I mean, even today when I'm doing these films and I'm filming people, and I'll mention some of their names here in a minute and tell you some stories about what's been happening in the past 5-6 months. You know, some really famous people. People just ask me, how are you financing it, Scott? That's all they want to know about.
Yeah.
They're like, they're not asking me, how did you get the interview with this particular guy? How did you get out in the ocean and swim with sharks and film that? They just want to know about the money. And that's the exact wrong question to be asking. You should be asking, how do you get the interviews? How do you do this? How do you edit? How do you get it out there? Because if you figure all that out and you figure out your motivation, the money will show up. I'll guarantee you that. That has been a constant thing that I've fallen back on. And I've had some dry spells where it's been really tough. But if you really, I mean, it's so cliche. If you follow your dreams and you really put energy into your passions, you'll become good at it, and people will start noticing, and you'll take risks, and you will be successful. And it's just, you leapfrog, you just climb the ladder. So, but just back to the Biker's Atlas real quick. That was all about facing the fear of financial insecurity and failure, But after about 10 years of doing that, I looked around and I just needed a change in my life. I needed to do something different. So I took a year off to do some soul searching and reading books and exercising. And, I got pretty toxic too, being around all those bikers. I was drinking too much and smoking cigarettes and not eating good and not exercising. So I took an entire year and just, no alcohol, no cigarettes, cleaned my life up, reading books again, exercising 5 days a week. And something kind of popped into my head and said, Scott, you need to go back to your roots. And at this stage in your life, which at the time I was 36 years old, it's your time to start learning to become a mentor now. You've had all these adventures. Now you need to start shifting gears into teaching and sharing this information that allowed you to go out and do all these amazing things. And so I started thinking about, well, what's the main thing that holds people back? What's the main thing that held me back? What was the number one single thing that allowed me, that gave me an advantage? And it was just instant. It was fear. The ability to control my fear, or to at least have the courage to walk through it or jump through it or swim through it or whatever was necessary, blast through it with the machine gun. But whatever kind of fear it was, whether it was the fear of dying, literally being physically killed, or the fear of financial insecurity, or the fear of being criticized and laughed at by friends and relatives who say, oh, I told you it wouldn't work out. You just need to, do your job like everybody else. What were you thinking? All grandiose. All of those fears, all of those things boiled down to fear. And the thing that I realized was, and I really started studying it, and really started studying NLP and some of the masters like Richard Bandler, who have taken a 6-month process of curing someone of a phobia and got it down to 10 or 15 minutes. When doctors said that was impossible, psychologists said, no, it's going to take 6 months of therapy to get somebody over a phobia. And we're not talking about just fear. We're talking about someone that has a violent reaction when they see snakes. They'll turn red, start sweating, even vomit. And I've seen these kinds of reactions. And so I learned these techniques, and I started sharing this information with people in the context of, you know what, it's not, you're not smart enough. It's not that you don't have enough money. It's not that you don't have enough experience or connections. It's just you're sitting around thinking things to death, trying to avoid failure or embarrassment, and all that is fear. And if you would just take action, you're going to start learning. You're going to start growing. But people don't, their fear of looking stupid and failing is worse than death. So they never get started. So I learned a technique from, and everybody's heard about it. There's been people that have made it famous, and millions of people have done it on a little bit of, in my opinion, a watered down or scale, not as intense as what I did. But it's the activity of firewalking. And it's where you build a big fire and you smooth out the coals after it's burned down, mash them down to where you've got a nice charcoal bed about 10 feet long, about 3 or 4 inches deep. And you take off your shoes and you take off your socks and you roll your pant legs up and you do whatever you got to do, whether it's meditation or chanting or breathing or just slapping yourself in the face or pounding yourself on the chest or yelling or whatever, to get yourself in a state of mind to walk across that thing. And I've led about 60 firewalks, taught hundreds of people to do it. It's still, to this day, one of the scariest things that I've done and that we do. But it's possible. It's possible to do it, and it's possible to do it without becoming severely injured. And sometimes you can do it and not even get a single blister. And most of the time you'll get a small blister, which is evidence that it's real.
Yeah, right.
Excuse me. If you didn't get something, I've seen people do this too. Oh, it wasn't real. There was a trick, something. It was not,
Yeah.
they did something to the bed of coals. No, it's real. It's 800 to 1200 degrees. And on almost every firewalk that we've done, somebody gets some pretty good blisters because they get into fear and they try to run across. They try to, goose step out of the thing or jump out of it or jump across, or they get in the middle of it and panic. And so what happens is, you can imagine you're stomping down into the coals, creating extra pressure. And of course, you're going to get burned. But if you just walk normal, if you just walk at a normal pace, normal speed, without panicking, you can get right across it. So I started teaching this to people and doing workshops. And the documentary is just a way to get the message out there. It's just one of those things. And I'm not looking to get it on Netflix or the Discovery Channel or any place like that. Of course, if they approach me and they see what we're doing, I'm certainly not going to turn down some sort of an exclusive opportunity. But right now, our intentions is just to put it out on the internet for free, on YouTube, on Facebook, on Vimeo. And we actually have already started dripping out some teasers where you can see us, swimming in the open ocean with sharks, and watching a man hand feed sharks like Tarzan. I mean, the guy has no fear. His name is Bryce Rohr. He's been on the Discovery Channel. He's been on the Animal Planet. He's been on Shark Week. He's been on Good Morning America. He's been on the Weather Channel. This guy is really famous right now, and he's this totally cool dude, and he will tell you it's all about fear. You got to do whatever it takes to get through your fear. And he takes people out on these boating tours 2 times a day, 7 days a week. This is like the hardest working guy in show business. And he showed me how to have the confidence to get in the water and, with 6 or 7, 8 to 10 foot sharks swimming around me, bumping into me, testing me, bumping up against me. Are you food? Are you chicken?
Right.
And that's what they're doing. They're testing you. And you have to shove them off sometimes. And then there comes a point usually where they get a little too excited and it's like time to get out of the water. I mean, I've done this 2 times now, not inside a cage, in the open ocean. And you can see this. You can see a teaser. You can't really see me in it. You can see me a couple of times jumping into the water and onto the boat. But I'm the guy filming this. So not only do I have to keep my camera focused, I have to look behind me all the time.
Right. And Scott, I've checked out all of those that you've got up so far, and I think the YouTube channel is called Fearless Documentary. Is that right?
It is.
Yep. I saw you guys taking the rattlesnakes off the road. I actually just today watched the one of you handling that rattlesnake, and I think it was the first time you handled a venomous snake. Is that right?
Yeah, and I used to have a total fear of snakes in general, and so what did I do? Me and Stephanie, we rescued 2 snakes, a jungle diamond carpet python and a Hog Island boa, and brought them into our home and kept them and handled them and had to feed them and clean out their cage when they shed and they go to the bathroom and all that. You have to constantly care for them, and you have to handle them. And sometimes they'll nip at you. And they get confused and they get defensive, or they haven't been handled for a long time. And so you have to constantly work with them to acclimatize them and desensitize them to their fear of you, because you're a predator to them. They think you're going to eat them. And so that went on for 5 years. But in doing the documentary, I've been around these guys who free handle, gaboon vipers, who have got the longest, like 3-inch long fangs and this incredibly toxic cocktail of venom, which will literally make you bleed out of every hole you have, including your eyes and ears and mouth and everywhere else you can imagine. That's how that venom works. And every venom works differently. I've watched people free handle Western Diamondback rattlesnakes and different types of cobras, but probably the most impressive thing I ever have watched or filmed was this guy named Albert Killian free handling a 14-foot long king cobra. And this one was rescued from some, it was part of a big drug raid in Miami, and this drug lord had this snake, and so God knows what they did to it to make it vicious. And the thing couldn't even be, and Albert just, he wanted it for that specific reason. The Florida Fish and Game and Wildlife, or whoever, the DEA, they knew about Albert. He's world famous. You can look up his name and you'll see videos of him. He's been doing this for 35 years. He's been bitten over 100 times by venomous snakes and survived, and, been to death and been brought back and many times, and is now consulted by, the U.S. Army Ranger Department. And Miami Venom 1 was created with his consultation. And so he's a real expert on venomous snakes. And so I found him, and you can't look his name up on the internet. You can't, he doesn't have an email address. He doesn't have a website. I literally had to drive down to South Florida and start poking around and following the breadcrumbs. And when I met him, he was this totally nice guy. And he's like, yeah, I've got it set up at this point. I'm kind of a recluse. I don't want to do all the interviews and all that. But something about our rapport and me being a former ranger and him having worked with the ranger department, he decided to start doing some filming again. So, we got out the King Cobra and filmed him handling this exact one. And it's vicious, man. I mean, this thing, it wants nothing but to attack. And you'll see it in the video. It either wants to get away or attack. So he free-handled this thing 2 times, and we're going back to Florida again in a few weeks to film him for the 3rd time and get some more commentary and more interview with him. And just, we sit down and have conversations and talk about fear, talk about life, talk about why people don't live their dreams and how much fear has to do with that. And we really are just picking up some incredible nuggets of wisdom that you can't find. There's no self-help books out there about this. It's the number one thing people need to be addressing, but there's no experts. There's plenty of TED Talks and people talking about fear, and they've read a bunch of books, or they're doctors or whatever, but nobody has said, all right, let's go out and interview the most fearless people on the planet and find out how they think. Find out how they look at the world. How do they look at danger? How do they look at failure and success and criticism? And what's their upbringing like? And what is their family like? And how do they deal with the pressures of the changing world? And we find a lot of similarities. And it doesn't matter if they're bull riders out here in West Texas, where we're at right now, or shark free divers, or, venomous snake handlers in South Florida. It's all the same stuff.
Scott, let me ask you one thing that I think at least some of these guys are going to have in common, because we talked about it briefly before. You were talking about in handling the snakes, a lot of it is having a really deep understanding of the different species or even the different individual snakes and their characteristics, what freaks them out, what makes them calm, have they eaten today, all those kind of details. And for example, if I went and tried to do a bunch of the stuff that the Rangers are out there doing somewhere right now, there is a much better chance of me doing something stupid and hurting myself because I don't really understand what they're doing, right? So the bull riders, the snake handlers, the shark guys, how much of it is understanding, and how does that help them overcome the fear they might have when they're uneducated?
One of the common things about these guys is they don't read books. They don't, and you'll even hear some of the guys talk about having tried to read some self-help books early on in their life and just finding that it was useless. It was too much in the head. And so they're what we call unconsciously competent. They don't know how they do what they do. They've just done it so many thousands and thousands of times. So when you start asking them these questions, it's sometimes difficult, and they'll almost contradict themselves and say, no, that's not what I do. I don't talk to myself in my head. But then I'll point out that, a few sentences before, they said, well, whenever they're in this tense situation, they'll just take a deep breath and just calm down. They literally are talking to themselves. So in their head, they're not doing that out loud. So internal communication, verbal communication, that's one of the things I've noticed. Visualization. They do all these things, and they're not conscious or cognizant of how they do it. But one thing that they've all agreed on, every single one of them, is that it's whatever they do is 90% mental. It's not very physical at all. And so even the guys are like, yeah, you've got to be in shape, you've got to train, and you've got to be physically strong, flexible, have endurance, whatever, be able to handle the animal or whatever the task may be. But then they'll say, well, but truly also, you're not going to do any of that unless you mentally decide to do it. So I guess it is all mental. And I've caught that on film a lot.
Right.
So all of these conversations, these hours and hours and hours of interviews, not only are going to be made into a documentary, but they'll also go into a book. So if people want to sit down and read and mark chapters and highlight certain things that these guys said or things that we discovered along the way, we're going to make it available in that format as well. Probably be working on that over the next summer, maybe into next fall once we get the documentary out. But they say knowledge is power. So without knowledge, you're powerless. And I've heard people say, well, knowledge is only potential power. That may be true, but now you're overthinking it again. The key is to get the knowledge, and where do you get that from? Don't get it from a book. I encourage you, whoever you are, whatever you want to do, go find living human beings and get around them. People who are experts at whatever it is you want to do, whether it's video editing. I have a video editor that's a mentor, and he gets paid. Don't expect to get all this information for free. Pay people, then they will be more willing to help you. And whatever it is I need to do, building a website or creating graphics. And you can find a lot of stuff on YouTube, tutorials on different things, but you need that living human connection. That's one thing I strongly believe in, that they're really missing the point. They're skimming through books, they're speed reading, and you actually need somebody to show you how to do something enough times, and then there's going to be a moment when you have the courage, and they're going to put the snake in your hand. And that's exactly what happened to me. After watching these venomous snake handlers long enough, there was this, I was just ready. And it wasn't with Albert Killian or Tom Crutchfield or these guys or Jesse Black, these people that everybody knows in Florida that they raise cobras and all this stuff. And it was a guy out here in West Texas that we went out rattlesnake hunting with. I was ready. He saw it, and he put a rattlesnake on the ground. He showed me how to pick it up with a hook and keep its head away. You hold it by the tail, and man, I just felt it. I felt that rattlesnake was comfortable, and he wasn't afraid, and I understood. That's what that rattle means. I'm afraid. Don't step on me. I'm down here. Look out. And when I felt comfortable, I simply took the hook away, and I was free handling him for about 5 minutes. And you can see the video. Now, don't go out and do this. Don't be arrogant. Don't be stupid. Don't go out and just pick up a venomous snake. This took me 5 years of keeping my own snakes, and then 5 months of interviewing these guys and watching them do it again and again before I attempted this one simple little thing. Okay? And the key here to remember is there's no difference in a venomous snake and a non-venomous snake in the principles and the techniques of how you handle them. You have to handle them gently, with respect, and make sure they don't feel fear. And if they're about to shed, they're going to be irritable. And if they're hungry, they're going to be irritable. If they have any injuries or mites or any type of parasites or anything, they're going to be irritable. If you just wake them up out of a dead sleep and try to pick them up, they're going to be irritable. So anytime we're irritable, what are we going to do? As any animal, we're going to strike, we're going to bite. So you have to respect them. How would you like it if somebody came into your house, just barged in the door, and grabbed you around the neck?
Yeah.
Started,
Good point. I can relate to that.
And you'd punch them.
Yeah.
So there's a process. You see the little clip where I'm holding him, but you don't see the hours, or let's say in one specific instance.
Yeah, it makes me think, Scott. You don't walk into your boss's office and ask for a raise right after he had to fire somebody and he hasn't had a cup of coffee and he just walked in the door dripping wet because he got rained on, right? I mean, it's the same. You can identify, start to understand where they're coming from.
And that's exactly what people are doing right now. We've got people out there who are screaming and rioting and looting and committing crime. Screaming for attention. And that's not how you do it, folks. You don't, it's like a baby who's screaming and crying. Some parents, they give them the candy or they give them whatever they want in the store to shut them up. But all that does is teach them, hey, if I scream and cry and throw shit around, then I'm going to get what I want. That's only going to get you so far. It's not going to get you anywhere in a corporate environment. It's not going to get you anywhere in a real committed and healthy relationship with another human being. And it's surefire heck going to get you zero anywhere as an entrepreneur. As an entrepreneur, you're going to have to take more crap and deal with less pay and be expected to do more and give refunds or whatever, go the extra mile just to be in business. So I know that's one common thread that you and I have had in our discussions over the past, God, how long? It's since 2007 we've known each other and been having these conversations. As an entrepreneur, you've got to, people, they don't understand. They have jobs and they dream about it and they think they can buy this course or that course. You're going to teach them how to build a business from home on the internet. It never works. You've got to find something that you love to do and then get good at it, and then figure out a way to create value for other people. And then, yes, you need to learn how to build a website and send emails and make videos and all that. But those are just skills. Those are just their tools and their mechanisms. That's not what, the internet marketing, I see a lot of people get really backwards on this. That's not a profession. If you're in the internet marketing business, you're a scam artist, plain and simple. The self-help industry is filled with these people too, who've never done anything with their life, and all they're doing is trying to regurgitate information and make money off of it. And that's another reason I wanted to make this film, is so people could actually, it's one subject. It's one, fear. It's not how to do everything and everything in the world. It's just, it's not how to plan or set goals. It's none of that. It's just how can we conquer this one thing? It's like an emergency brake in a 500 horsepower sports car. If you've got an emergency brake on, I don't care how much planning and horsepower you have, and you've got your GPS all set. Yeah, sure, that's awesome. But you're not going anywhere with that emergency brake on. We can all visualize that. That's how fear works. Another good way to look at it is, you can have this awesome computer with, 12 gigabytes of RAM. I just got one to help me with video editing. I love it. It's awesome. It's so fast. And, a terabyte of space. And you can buy these computers these days, and they're awesome. And they will, you remember 10 years ago, we couldn't do anything with the computers we had. Now the computers we have are like the ones they had at NASA 10 years ago. Well, guess what? What happens if you get a virus on that computer? It will not function at all, right?
Yep.
And you have to do.
I know that all too well.
So that's fear. You've got this big, powerful brain. You're filling it with more and more education, and people are over-educated now. They got master's degrees, and they're working at Walmart or McDonald's. Why? Because they have the fear to go out and strike it out on their own and start becoming an entrepreneur, start becoming a professional.
Scott,
that's a real,
sorry.
That's what I want people to realize is just, that's the take home is I don't care what you want to do with your life. I'm not going to tell you how to do it. You're going to have to figure that out. But what I do want to share with you is how to get through that fear that's stopping you, how to get the virus off of your computer, how to release that emergency brake, how to just imagine building a dam in a river. And a dam is useful. It dams up the water, but everything downstream, if you don't let some water out, everything's going to dry up and die, right?
Yep.
So sometimes, and we build that dam brick by brick by brick, experience by experience over a lifetime of failure and embarrassment and things not working out. And it's all these beliefs, and it builds this big wall of fear. Man, if you just take one of those bricks out, the water starts flowing through, and that represents the energy and the power that's already inside you. And guess what happens? Just visualize it. It's going to start pulling and eroding away the other bricks, and pretty soon it's just going to come all tumbling down. And then all that water can go downstream to all that dried up area that's not getting any energy and life. And nature takes care of itself. It's an amazing thing.
You're making me think of some conversations I've had here when you brought up entrepreneurs and dealing with setbacks, delays, embarrassment, and all of that. Your friends and family thinking that you're crazy. I've talked to a lot of people here who are kind of new. I'm in Chiang Mai, if people listening don't know, and that's in Thailand. And it's a real hub for people that are doing different kinds of online businesses. And so I talked to a lot of people that are relatively new to owning their own businesses and trying to do something on their own. A lot of them come from the corporate world, or maybe they were, fresh out of college or whatever it is. But we have this idea that if somebody goes to a university for 4 years or 6 years or 8 years, depending on exactly what kind of degree you're getting, and you spend, tens of thousands of dollars, and you walk out of there with maybe student debt, but you've got your master's degree or your bachelor's or your PhD or whatever, they give you a fancy hat and there's this big ceremony and everybody in your family is like clapping and crying and happy for you, and you get this piece of paper and you hang it on the wall, But, okay, that same society, they'll look at somebody who spends, say, 6 months trying to learn how to create an internet business, and they might, their first one doesn't work out, and say they lose like $5,000, which is kind of a lot for an internet business. A lot of them, you might lose $2,000. And people think it's this horrible failure, and oh my God, what's wrong with you? Why don't you just go get a job? And, where's that disconnect there? They'll spend 10 times that much money getting a degree, and they haven't actually gone out and created anything yet. So I think a lot of it is just how you frame, what is it that you fear? Is it just how you're framing what success is and what failure is? It's an interesting little mind game.
Well, I'll tell you, in interviewing all of these guys that I just mentioned, I've interviewed 9-time world champion all-around cowboy Ty Murray, who, I don't know what his net worth. This guy was married to Jewel. I went out to his 2,500 acre ranch. Some of these bull riders these days, the top prize in the PBR is $1 million for the number one position. I've interviewed people from all different angles, but they will all tell you the same thing. And this is what I want to say to what you just spoke of. None of them do it for the money. None of them. None of the people who are the best out there, they do it for the passion, because they love to do it. They either see themselves as an adrenaline junkie or an adventurer, or some of the guys, Chris Gillette with he was with Gator Boys on the Animal Planet, the show you may be familiar with. I interviewed him, watched him working with gators, and went down to the Everglades outpost, and we went alligator egg collecting. Yes, we actually collected eggs out of alligator nests with mama alligators like jolting out of the water trying to bite us and get away from my babies. And because if you incubate the eggs, you have a 90% success rate of them hatching and surviving. And in the wild, you've got a 90% chance they're going to die. So Chris is very passionate about the planet and about the ecology, specifically Florida and the waters off the coast of Florida. He also is a shark freediver. And that's all. If you go to Chris's Facebook page every day, it's just all about loving these animals and sharing the disasters that are going on in our ecology with different, corporate entities dumping toxic this or that into the environment, or how these unconscious things that we're not aware of, that the media is not talking about, are killing off entire species of animals and just making people aware. That's his passion. And he will tell you he doesn't do it for the money. And you can clearly see it with all of these guys. I interviewed Captain Andy and Taffy Fisher down in Key West. And Taffy is the daughter of Mel Fisher, who, if you're familiar with the $500 million gold sunken treasure discovery of the Etosha off of Key West back in the late 80s. Captain Andy was actually the guy who put his hands on the first gold bars. It wasn't Mel Fisher. I interviewed him, okay, and I interviewed Taffy, and they will both tell you, and they'll say Mel said the same thing. It was never about the money. They didn't go out and buy mansions with all that money. They just wanted to preserve history. It was a story about these ships that were lost, in the ocean 400 years ago, right after the whole Spanish conquistador thing. All this gold had been ripped out of the South America, and now they're taking it back to Spain, and they got caught in a hurricane, and people died. Mel lost his oldest son, and they lost a photographer. They lost like 4 or 5 people searching for that treasure. What motivates you to go on when you lose your own child? It's not money. It can't be. And when you go down there to their museum and you look at the coins and you see the history, it's magical. That's what gets them out of bed in the morning. They're still out searching for treasure, and you can become an investor, and you can go out on dives with them. We are planning on going back ourselves, myself and Stephanie, to go dive with them. If not this fall, maybe next spring, but if we have time, hopefully. But to go down and interview Captain Andy more. I mean, if that's not an example about not doing it for the money, I mean, these people, the most successful treasure hunters of all time, didn't do it for the money. These bull riders out here in Texas, they're making some major cash. The PBR is on CBS now every week. Millions of dollars in advertisement and sponsorship. They don't do it for the money. They go back and work on the ranch during the week. And then on the weekend, they go ride rodeos. These guys literally work like 7 days a week, 8 or 9 months out of the year. And they have a little bit of time off in the winter. That's another thing with entrepreneurs. You have to, if you're going to rise to that level, you have to have something that you love so much that you do it every day. Bryce Rohrer takes people out on eco shark diving tours every single day, 7 days a week, 2 tours a day. And after one, I was exhausted, floating around in the ocean out there. And
sure, yeah.
I was tired. The sun. This guy's a machine and just has a passion for sharing the fact that, hey, these sharks are not dangerous. They don't want to eat you. That's a myth put out there by the media and by Hollywood. They're just curious. And if you behave correctly in the ocean, they will not bite you. If you do it long enough, you're going to have an encounter. They'll tell you that too. And they'll say that about bull riding, and they'll say that about venomous snake handling. And they'll say that about treasure diving or whatever. If you do anything long enough, my dad used to say, when I first started riding motorcycles, he said, if you're going to ride, you're going to slide. So wear your leathers, wear a helmet. And by God, he was right. For like 20 years, he was like, not right, but I had an accident or two, and I remembered. And they have a saying in Texas. They say, there's never been a bull that couldn't be rode, and there's never been a cowboy that couldn't be throwed.
Nice.
And it simply means that if you're going to ride bulls, you're going to get thrown off. But if you keep getting back on with the attitude that I can ride that bull, you're going to be successful. And people like Ty Murray and Cody Lambert. Cody Lambert was he was one of the 3 characters in the movie 8 Second. No, he didn't write all that poetry, and he says 90% of the movie is not accurate, but, he was around Lane Frost, him and Tuff Hedeman, and you can watch that movie. And I went to this guy's ranch and interviewed him, and he runs the PBR bull riding academy, and he is the head stock director. He picks the bulls that all the bull riders are going to ride, and he looks for the meanest, nastiest bulls out there. I'm going to be putting up a teaser where he and Ty are talking about this very subject. It's just a quick couple minutes, but he says, hey, you know what I tell people? He said, you've got to be 100% to ride bulls. If you're not 100%, you don't want to get hurt. You don't want to die, but you are going to get hurt, and you hope that you don't die. And he said, if you can't accept that risk, just don't do it. Just do something else. It's just as simple as that. So what is that? That means it's just and they told me, Cody told me this. He said, you can't train people. You can't, everybody's different. You have to make a personal decision to do it. But once you do, you've got to go all in, and go all in knowing that you're going to get hurt. If you're going to handle venomous snakes, you are going to get bit. If you're going to swim with sharks, the chances are you're going to get bit eventually. These guys that work with alligators, they've all got scars. But man, think of the adventure. Think of the life. Think of whatever you want to do, whoever's listening to this. And if it is building a website, don't listen to me. If that's my thing. I think that we live this digital world too much, and we need to get out into reality, into nature more, and experience and be around people. But hey, if that's your thing, and you're part of a new generation, I'm part of an older generation, I want to experience reality. But if that's your thing, then you do it. And you do it 100%. And be 100% committed. Think like Neo in The Matrix, or whoever is your mentor, your inspiring character. Set out to be like them, and be as good as them or better than them, and learn everything you can from them, and you will be. Don't let fear get in your way. So if what I said earlier about the internet marketers and the web technology, if that, rubs you the wrong way or gave you a bad feeling, hey, that's just my stuff, man. If that's your passion, hey, without people like you, we wouldn't have websites. I wouldn't be able to make these videos. So that's just my personal opinion. Don't let the fear of other people's opinions and criticism stand in the way of you doing what you love to do. And the other thing is, too, all these people have a natural talent at what they do. And they'll tell you, this isn't for everybody. And I asked Cody, I'm like, can anybody ride bulls? It's really all mental? And it's just, he's like, no. He said, everybody can't. But everybody does have something that they can be good at. They'll all agree with that. So you just got to find out where your talents are and work on expanding those. And don't be afraid to be who you are.
Scott, I wanted to ask you, you're running Club Fearless, and we've talked a little bit about it. Not everybody listening is going to go, dive with sharks or ride bulls. The people in your club, do you have a lot of people that are coming from, like accountants and salespeople and people with kind of, ordinary professions? And what are they getting out of it? Like, I know you guys are walking on coals, you're doing all these other things. How does that affect them in, more of an ordinary, quote, ordinary existence?
Well, I think we're definitely in the beginning stages, the infancy stages of Club Fearless. And who out there has seen the little clip, Leadership Lessons with the Dancing Guy? Have you seen that video?
Yeah, the guy on the hillside where he's dancing alone.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's like some hippie concert, and he's just dancing around. And then one guy gets up, and he starts dancing crazy, and the guy's like, no, you do it like this. This is how you do it. Crazier, wild, And so he's going wild, and then a third person comes up. Like half of the video is just the first guy and the second and then the third. But then something happens. All of a sudden, all these other people get up, and they start dancing, and they start joining in, and it just start. And then everybody gets to the point where it's like they don't want to be caught sitting down, so they all jump on board. Right now, the club is primarily my former, current. They're still my friends, but ex-Army Rangers, Special Forces, those types. There's, of course, these snake handlers and all these types of people, but we do have people that are starting to come from other walks of life. Waiters, waitresses, servers, We do have an accountant. There's a guy who that's what he does all day long. Computer technology guys who travel all over the world, and I couldn't even explain to you what they do.
Yeah.
But they're definitely, all they do is sit in front of a computer all day. So just like in the biker industry, what we saw an explosion back in the late 90s, what we called Rolex riders or weekend warriors. And they would go out and they'd buy the Harley and the leather jacket and the chaps and put it in a trailer, ride it down to Daytona and get out like 10 miles outside of the city and ride in, like make their wife drive them in or their girlfriend drive them in so they could look like a badass. There's a lot of that. You know, there's a lot of fans. And so we've made Club Fearless like hardcore up until now. Nobody could get in unless you proved that you did 13 things off of our list of 100 crazy ass things that you can do. And you can go to clubfearless.us and see that list. And so the membership is very small right now, but we just opened it up to, here's the philosophy. Anybody can join. It's free to join. Anybody can be a member of Club Fearless. If you want to get outside of your comfort zone and you want to be in a tribe of people who think like that, who are constantly pushing their limits. This isn't a death wish. I would say we are kind of adrenaline junkies, but hey, what's wrong with that? If you're going to be addicted to something, why not be addicted to your own chemicals that you produced in your body, which have been proven by science to reverse heart disease and kill cancer and reduce or prevent Alzheimer's. All these problems that we have as human beings is because we're not using the tools that we have in our brains, in our organs, in our bodies. So, you know, if I'm an adrenaline junkie, what's wrong with that? But
yeah.
That's who we are, and you can read more about it on the website. But if you do want to earn the patch, the equivalent of a Ranger tab or a Special Forces tab or a SEAL Trident, we have our own version of that. It's the Skull and Bones. And you have to do 13 of these dares and make videos of them or take pictures and be able to prove that you did it. And then you earn this patch and you get a diploma, just like if you went to Ranger School, and you get a member card. And we're going to make challenge coins available here in the very near future, and pins, lapel pins, and different things that you can wear so that you meet somebody. Oh, you're a member of Club Fearless? Prove it. Where's your coin? Where's your pin? Where's your patch? Where's your member card? There's a certain something you can't get by buying a pair of Nikes or buying a jersey. And you think you're a part of a tribe by buying some football player's jersey. No, you didn't do anything to prove yourself.
It reminds me of the Letterman's jacket in high school, and you get I actually never got the jacket, but, you know, when I got my letter, my piece of paper that said I lettered, you know, in football, I'm like, man, I'm a letterman, you know, I'm like in the club now.
Yeah.
Yep.
Exactly. And you know what? You don't have to wear the patch. You don't have to, if you don't want to, like, display the patch around, don't. But at least the thing that you will be appealed to, that you will be excited about and feel good about, is you will know there's this community of people out there who have met the same standards that you have. And whenever you meet one of us, you're going to have an instant trust and respect. Those two words. Trust you. I trust you because if you were willing to go out on a limb and do this, whatever task it was, and then I respect you. So I know that you got my back and I got your back. If we get in a tough situation, I know you're not going to run like a chicken. I can count on you. And in today's world, the way things are going, that's another reason I want to build this club. It's a network of people all over that you can trust if things get bad. And they very well could get bad if people continue to be subjected or allow themselves to be controlled by the fear that's being put out in the media that's trying to divide and conquer and control people. It's being used every day. People are being brainwashed to be afraid of this group or that group or this sexual orientation or that orientation or this color of skin or this religion. And some of the people that are the worst are the ones that are claiming to be victims. They are the worst perpetrators of all. They're the worst racists are the ones who are screaming racism. The worst sexists are the ones that are screaming sexism, because they use that to make people feel guilty and ashamed, and then, oh, okay, I'm sorry, I'm such a piece of junk here. I'll give you whatever you want. They use it as a tool to manipulate people. That's using fear in a negative way. And that is not creative. There's no love, there's no passion to that. There's just hate and anger. And this stuff is going to come to an end eventually, but it's going to get worse before it gets better. So I want to help give people who are just sick and tired of hearing about all this nonsense a place to go where I don't care what your color of your skin is. I don't care if you're gay or straight or transgender or Muslim or Christian or Jew, or you're an atheist, or you're a hardcore, you talk with God all day long, every day. I don't care. All I care about is, did you do the task? Because if you did the task and you've completed the test, then you are worthy of being in this club, and I respect you. And you wear the patch, and you wear the jacket or the shirt or whatever emblem, put it on your car or carry a coin around. You can wear that with a good, healthy, not arrogant, but a healthy sense of pride and self-appreciation and love and connection and brotherhood and camaraderie and sisterhood with your fellow club members. We can all look around and say, you know what, that skull and bones, what it really means is a couple things. Death is inevitable, so live every day like it's your last. Remember, you're going to be skull and bones one day. Remember that every single day. That's the core message of the samurai warrior. They meditated upon inevitable death daily, and then they became fearless. Because if you're not afraid to die, then you can really start living. The second thing that skull and bones reminds us of is that underneath all of your labels and your masks and your mascara and your jerseys and jackets and all this stuff that you put on to cover yourself up because you're scared to be who you really are, underneath all that, you're skull and bones. And all skulls and all bones, there's no feminine, there's no male, there's no black, there's no white. It's just white skull and bones. We're all the same. So what's going to make the difference in your lifetime is not what labels you put on yourself, not even the skull and bones, not even the symbol that we've created. It's what you do. And it's the relationships that you form along the way. And it's the experiences and the memories that you have. A lot of these older bull riders that I'm interviewing to talk about the current bull riders, just to provide substance in the documentary to help people understand how dangerous this is. And people from all over have told me the same thing. The older generation, they're like, I don't regret what I did do. I regret what I didn't do. I wish I would have done more. I wish I would have made more mistakes and eaten less healthy and gone out and done crazy things more often. I've heard that again and again and again. And so I'm kind of like in the middle of my life, and this is my message. That's the most important thing to me, is to get the message out. It's like a piece of software. You can download this right now, or you can reject it. You can continue to operate with viruses on your computer, or you can get them off. It's your choice. Do whatever you want to do. This is what I'm doing. I'm going to put a film out showing all this. There's a club that anybody can join. You can go to clubfearless.us today. It's free to join. So what's stopping you?
I'll put a link to that up on our site here if you're on OD on Life. I'll put a link to that. And I'm also going to put a link to maybe a couple of your teaser videos. I got a kick out of watching some of those. And I'll put up the dancing guy too. I just Googled Guy Starts Dance Party, and that was the first one that came up, was that video in 2009. It was actually in my home state of Washington. And, they say they say leaders go first, and that is a perfect illustration of that guy. Just got up there. He looked like a fool for a while. People were laughing, and then, like you said, one guy joined him, then one or two more, and then within a couple minutes there was a mob around him. I mean, dozens or maybe hundreds of people. I haven't seen that in years. I'm going to watch that again after we're done. It's a good one.
It's how any brand starts off, whether it's an iPhone or whatever. You have to have the guts to stand up and look like a fool.
Yep.
That's the key to leadership. And what stops you? Fear.
When you were talking about skull and bones and we're all going to be one day, it reminds me when I had the flea market, one day somebody walked in, and people caught me off guard all the time at that place. They were always trying to sell me things, trade things with me. And this guy walked in with kind of a weird look on his face, and he had this bag, and he pulls out a skull, and he said, "Do you guys want to buy this?" And I said, it looked real. I said, that's not a replica or anything, is it? He said, "No, that's real." And I wasn't even sure, is this even legal? Can I buy this, and where is this from? What's going on? But it was so striking when he just pulled it out of the bag and it was sitting on the counter. And, all I could think about was like that. It makes you wonder, who was that? That's a real person on the counter of my flea market. And all the things that you just mentioned, what do they wish they would have done during their brief little time here on Spaceship Earth, right? What did they manage to accomplish? What did they wish they would have tried? I mean, it's so real when it's right there in front of you. If you've never seen a real human skull, there's something really deep about that. It's a good reality check.
Yeah, one of the tests or dares on our list is to go to a morgue and to witness and be around a real dead body. If you've never been around just a random stranger, not at a funeral, we've all been to funerals, but to actually go observe someone on the table or an autopsy. And it's horrible, it's gross, it's whatever, but it is what it is. And to be able to get in touch with death allows us to really get in touch with life. When you start realizing you're not immortal, it kind of puts a fire under your ass to start taking more action and doing the things that you're putting off because, we're not going to be here forever.
Right. Yeah.
And like that skull, I mean, you don't know who that was. They weren't, obviously it was, but who knows? It may have been someone important or unimportant or done something amazing or not, but you're not going to be remembered for this thing you're walking around in, this body. You're not going to be remembered for that, unless you're Arnold Schwarzenegger, I guess.
Right.
Unless you're a professional bodybuilder. But, even the models, even Arnold, he doesn't have that body anymore.
Mm-hmm. So
he did what he did, but I think he'll be remembered more for just the positive impact of saying, I can come to America and, lay as a bricklayer, broke completely with no money, and become a multi-millionaire, internationally famous bodybuilder, movie star, governor of California. Say what you will about the guy. He's made mistakes. You've made mistakes. I've made mistakes. We've all made mistakes. But, he was not going to be remembered for his body. He's going to be remembered for how he inspired people you could do anything, right. I think. Or so if you take one of these supermodels that walks down the runway, you see them today, you forget them tomorrow. But when their age fades and their beauty fades, you're going to remember them from a brand they started or a charity or a foundation that they started. And some of them have. And then a lot of them go down the path of, just drugs and alcohol, and you never hear of them again. So you're not going to be remembered for the skull and the bones. You're not going to be remembered for your body. You're going to be remembered for what you do. So that's a lesson too. That's something to think about. We all want to be thought of by our fellow human beings as a good person, as somebody who did something important and significant. That's a huge core need that we all have. But we let fear get in the way. Go out and do it. Do it now. That's what I say.
Yep. Arnold Schwarzenegger actually has come up on this show before, and he gets a lot of anybody that's done something significant, of course, there are people out there, the critics will pop up. But the way I look at it is you can learn something from everybody, but you can't learn everything from any one, right? Like Arnold Schwarzenegger isn't your role model in every little area of life, but you can learn from his experiences and everybody else's experiences, and you can take something from that and better your own life. And whether it's learning what to do or what not to do, we all have these role models around us, and if you tune in and pay attention, it can save you a lot of time and hassle.
Yeah, and if you do think that there's somebody out there that's perfect, I guarantee you're going to be disappointed eventually.
Yeah.
Something's going to come out. You're going to find out that they're not a god. They're just a human being, and they may just be better at hiding their flaws than you or me.
And to me, that's inspiring when you look in, again, to talk about biographies. If you read biographies of your heroes, you're going to learn things that most people don't know about them, and a lot of the struggles and setbacks that they had or the character flaws. And it's inspiring to see what people can accomplish in spite of those setbacks or flaws. I really get excited.
Yeah, I tell you, I totally agree. If you're going to read something to help change your life, don't read self-help books, read biographies.
Yeah.
Self-help are great, but if you really want to change, read biographies. But here's what I really want to say. And I didn't know this. I kind of stumbled to this one this year. If you really want to get that, everybody puts their pants on one leg at a time thing, go interview people. Go pick out the most successful people that you can think of and interview them. Make your own documentary. And I'll guarantee you are going to be blown away because they're just normal people, man. I've interviewed Manny Quigg. We all saw him on Jackass, the animal guy. He was on Wild Boys. He's world famous. This guy, he was the original shark diver. He's just like this normal guy. And I hung out with him for a couple days. We stayed in this hunting cabin. We got up in the morning, and he made the most awesome Cuban coffee. He's from Cuba originally. And when Castro took over and everything, his family moved over here. So he's just like this totally normal, down-to-earth, and, a big-time Christian, very conservative. I would never think that he was like he was. But he will tell you, yeah, I'll dive with sharks. I'll grab onto them. You can watch the videos of him and alligators, and he wrestles alligators in the water. But he won't get up on top of a telephone pole. He cannot handle heights. Everybody has their fears. Nobody is completely fearless. And so I forgot to tell you this too, we've decided to not even release the film under the name Fearless because of this exact reason. It would be false. Masters of Fear is going to be the name of the film, and it's going to be sponsored by Club Fearless. So that's something that we can do. We can learn to master our fear, but it's like mastering a horse and getting it behind a carriage or learning to ride it. If you don't continue to work with it, it's going to get wild again. Mastery means constant. It's a lifetime choice. So if you want to master your fear, you need to go to the masters. So that's what we're doing. And I can't wait to share more of the film with you. We're putting out a new teaser later today. So maybe just wait until the end of the day and we get the podcast together, and then we'll put all the new links up, Dan.
Sure.
And people can really start seeing the new teasers, and it's very exciting. And I'm very grateful that you took the time to allow us to share what's going on, and it's been good to talk to you about the past. Time flies.
It's
been 8 or 9 years since I've known you now.
8 or 9 years since my mom found your Facebook page and told me you ought to check this guy out. He's posting a lot of really good stuff. And yeah, here we are.
Yeah, Carolyn. So I can't wait also to come and do some Fearless stuff with you in Thailand. I can't believe how cheap it is to fly over there. And what do we call that? It's called, I know the digital nomad, but there's I think arbitrage.
Yeah, the term you liked, we talked about last time, was geo arbitrage. If you can live in a place with a low cost of living and earn money in a place with a high cost of living and high salaries and wages, then it's a good way to go. It's that geo arbitrage.
That's awesome. And so you have to overcome a lot of fear to be able to make that leap to get over into a different country with a different language, and literally king cobras going by your hut.
Yep. Yep.
I love that.
I saw one.
You heard a bunch of commotion. You come outside and there's a king cobra slithering by with a guy in a stick poking.
Yeah, a guy with like a 10-foot bamboo pole trying to poke it to go away, and instead of chasing it away from the bungalows, it went under the bungalow about 15 feet away from mine and was never heard from again. So
that's got to make you feel comfortable.
When I came home at night, I stepped heavily, so it could hear me coming. Because just like you said, the thing doesn't want to fight me. He's got better things to do. He just wants to go eat a mouse or something. Yeah. It's
like the kid whistling in the dark. He's walking home to make sure everybody hears, "Hey, here I come."
Yeah. I like that name change, Masters of Fear. That's a good one. I approve heartily.
Awesome. Yeah, and there's another documentary that we weren't aware of that's specifically only about bull riding, and guess what they called it?
Oh,
Fearless.
Okay, there you go.
It was just released last month, and we've been working on this thing for a couple of years, and just really pulled the trigger on it about 5 months ago. And when that came out, we're like, oh man, But as Ty Murray told me, he said that's kind of like getting kicked in the head with the golden horseshoe. It's the it's not what you wanted, but something better comes. One door shuts, another door opens. And I think because that's, saying, oh, yeah, you can be fearless. It's not possible. Maybe for 8 seconds, maybe compartmentalizing it into one specific task or skill. But we all have our fears. And so I don't want people to get the idea that there's this way where you can walk around completely fearless. It's just, that's a neat fairy tale, but it's not possible.
Yeah.
The main thing is I want you to learn how to master your fear and get through it, even use it. Even some of the people I've talked to, they're like, it's like a wave. It's like energy. Just ride it, man. Surf the fear. So that was a cool analogy too.
Yeah. I was just listening to a book called Bold, and there's two authors. I'm blanking on one of their names, but Peter Diamandis is one of the authors. He's the guy that founded the X Prize for the first, what was the deal? First private suborbital flight to space and all that kind of stuff. But they talk about the state of flow and how a certain amount of, fear or discomfort or stimulation or novelty or whatever you want to call it is required. You get outside your comfort zone, and it's this higher level of focus, which, like you said, it doesn't last forever. It can last for the length of a basketball game or a few seconds on a bowl or whatever. But yeah, I think that's cool that you're authentic and honest and telling everybody, even your heroes have had to deal with fear. They may just have better strategies, in place to do it.
And they all, these bull riders, almost to a man, they're terrified of snakes. I mean, there's rattlesnakes everywhere out here, and they're like, "You're crazy, man. You're going out and you're trying to catch them, and what's wrong with you?" Yeah. I'm like, "What's wrong with you, man? You get on a 2,000-pound bull that can stomp you to death, paralyze you, or gore you to death with its horns. Who's crazy here?"
Yeah.
So we're all a little bit crazy. Just choose your crazy.
Yeah. Good point. Yeah. And Scott, is there anything else that you wanted to cover? I think I've gotten a lot out of this, but I want to give you a chance if there's any last thoughts you want to part with, or.
Not really. I just really appreciate your friendship, Dan. It's been so good to know you all these years, and I thank you. I thank whoever took the time to listen to this and get through all of the crazy stories. I guess if anybody has a question or a comment or anything, just post it on Dan's wall, and I'll do my best to get back and answer your questions. So if I can, this is my mission in life. The film, I'm not doing it for the money at all. Club Fearless, I'm not doing it for the money at all. So if you have something that you need that you're struggling with, just reach out and let us know. And I'm sure that we can put our heads together and help you out.
Yeah, and Scott, so of course people can reach you at Club Fearless, and I know also you've got a Facebook page that I believe is just called Scott Goodknight. Is that right?
Yes, you can just look up Scott Goodknight on Facebook, or if you're friends with Dan, you can see we're mutual friends.
Yep.
And my last name has a K in it.
Right.
So,
I was just going to say
look me up. Let's be friends.
It's Goodknight, like the white knight, with a Knight. So check out Scott.
Yeah, and I look forward to meeting some of your friends who are on this amazing new lifestyle of living in different countries and operating off of the internet. We're going to be traveling around a lot more, going around to interview different people in different parts of the world. So let's network and make new friends, and who knows, we may show up wherever you're at.
Yeah, for sure. There's definitely some interesting people to meet here. And and thank you too for everything and for coming on today and sharing with people. I really appreciate it.
Yes, let's do this more often.
Yeah, sounds good, Scott. So everybody, thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed it. And big thank you one more time to Scott. Check out Club Fearless, and I'll post some links to the videos that he mentioned, the teasers for the upcoming documentary on odonlife.com, and we'll link over to Club Fearless and Scott's Facebook page, etc. So thank you, Scott, and have a great day over there. And say hi to Stephanie for me, and have fun with the rest of your filming.
Thank you, brother. Look forward to talking with you more soon.
All right. Take care, Scott.
Ladies and gentlemen, grab your pen and paper and write down 3 things you're grateful for. This is OD on Life. Come get high with us.